the member for Vernon-Monashee.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Before I speak to the Bill 10, I would like to acknowledge that I'm virtually joining this session from the unceded territory of the Okanagan Indian Nations, and I thank them for their stewardship of this land. Mr. Speaker, I wholeheartedly speak in favor of the Bill 10 SPLY Act, as I am confident and assured that this much needed money will help British Columbians to thrive during and after the pandemic. I would like to make one thing very clear to the members of the opposition, that I am speaking to this bill by carefully reading and rereading this bill, as I always do my research. I am an educated and well-informed adult, so I am aware about my decision to support what I strongly believe in, as this bill is solely meant to help British Columbians. Mr. Speaker, as an elected representative for people in Vernon-Monashee who put their trust and support behind me, it matters to me to do my research behind every bill in order to see if this will benefit my constituents. I am also a mother of 3 children in university to high school and one getting ready for the elementary school. I can appreciate the sincere efforts and improvements our BC NDP government had made in order to support people during the pandemic at every front. Whether it was healthcare, keeping schools safe, helping individuals by giving them BC Recovery Benefit plus one-time $1,000 to many British Columbians who had lost jobs in 2020 when pandemic started. Small and medium-sized business recovery grants, additional mental health and recovery beds. Our government also made the single largest investment in housing sector, Mr. Speaker, and much more. Mr. Speaker, it is important for people, businesses, and communities to know that the support will be there. It will be there for them regardless of the timing of the budget. We've come a long way together, but the road to recovery is still ahead of us, and our support will continue for British Columbians. We need to address the pandemic, as this is the biggest challenge and reality that the entire world is facing. I'm not sure why some members of the opposition are expressing their concerns when we mention that we are dealing with the pandemic. We have to mention that because every decision we are making, every action we're taking, it is linked to the pandemic. So not sure what's the reluctance of accepting that that we shouldn't mention or we're making excuse. No, it is a serious reality that we're all have to deal with it. Mr. Speaker, we all know that it is a common practice every year the province passes an interim SPLY bill to ensure grant supports and services can continue while the new budget is debated in the legislature. We always have interim SPLY well past the end of the fiscal year to allow for a robust estimate debate. As previously mentioned by our Honorable Finance Minister, moving the budget in April, this gives us greater time to connect with the businesses and people and develop an effective long-term plan that builds on all our current supports. Mr. Speaker, I am confident that Budget 2020 will continue to focus on keeping people safe during the pandemic, and we will do this with an eye to how we position our province to seize the opportunity that recovery will offer. Mr. Speaker, it was heartwarming for me to walk into my office at the legislature on March 8th, the first day of me being there, and seeing a beautiful thank you card from one of my constituents thanking our government for the BC Recovery Benefit. And I'll quickly read that beautiful sentiment. Greetings from Vernon. Recently, I received my BC Recovery Benefit. I was able to share that money with my daughter and her young family. I am sure they can put that money to very good use in these unusual and difficult times. Thank you very much for all your efforts. Happy New Year. And I won't mention name as I haven't asked their permission if I was allowed to do so. And there are several other emails. And also I personally talked to the small and medium-sized business owners here in my community when I went there to share the business recovery grant. And everybody is so appreciative. Not only that, I have been regularly getting some cards here in Vernon. I come from healthcare sector and worked at the front lines even shortly after my election. My husband is also working in healthcare, and we talk often since COVID started. We don't even want to think or imagine what would we have done if we had the BC Liberals government in power. These same sentiments are being shared by many healthcare workers in the staff room, break rooms, and we are so grateful for the work that BC NDP government has done, and we are grateful that they're in power. I'm not saying previous government, I am saying BC Liberals government. Given what we have witnessed over 16 years of experience in a variety of healthcare settings and with 2 health authorities, you cannot find a better person to contrast rather than the ones who faced these challenges and witnessed the direct effects of the cuts and addition to the services, so we can contrast it really well. We don't need to read any books. We have lived through this and still living through this. One can desperately run around to search for the quotes, trying to relate. I would suggest to the members of the opposition, rather than speaking to the people who have been away from healthcare for over a decade and are out of touch, go talk to the ones who have lived through your government's cuts and austerity and even lost loved ones clearly due to the lack of resources like I did, my late husband. Mr. Speaker, this bill will help to continue efforts of BC recovery. We can come out of this pandemic stronger and will help us with the transition. And if members of the opposition want to talk to people at the front line, I have hundreds of names, or I can connect you with those people. So you can clearly know what it meant, all the supports that BC NDP government had added since the COVID started, or since they made a government. This money will help healthcare sector, mental health and addiction crisis, housing, much needed childcare centers, infrastructure, our schools and teachers. I am so proud of our BC government's commitment and everyday work to reduce poverty, to make life more affordable, and for fulfilling more than 79% of our promises within 3.5 years, and we continue to do so. Few examples are eliminating the MSP premiums, freezing rental rates, large cuts to ICBC rates, despite having to fix the dumpster fire that was created by the BC Liberals government, largest increase in the disability benefit for the first time since 1987, for making the largest investment in student housing in BC to help our students to succeed. I am proud to share that in the Okanagan, we just received $66 million for the Okanagan College campus in Vernon, Kelowna, and Salmon Arm, where there are 276 beds are being added. This is the first time in BC's history for Vernon to receive student housing. This will help to free up the rental housing in the community when students will be able to save time and money, as these rental rates are going to be 25 to 30% lower than the rental market. 1 year into this pandemic, Mr. Speaker, British Columbia has returned to 99.4% of pre-pandemic employment levels. BC's economy remains one of the strongest in Canada, having created jobs in each of the past 10 months. The labor force survey of February shows BC added almost 2,700 jobs, with the majority of those jobs going to women. This dropped BC's unemployment rate to 6.9% from 8% in January and the month before. I don't know why members of the opposition don't see those facts, and we're not making stuff up. These are the facts, and these are everywhere. If you do your research, you'll find them, and you'll be happy to know that. Employment in some parts of the province is above pre-pandemic levels. Prince George, for example, is at 106.7%, and Kamloops is at 103.3%. While this does not mean that all sectors are back to full strength, it does mean that even as our tourism and hospitality sectors continue to struggle, our economy is growing. Mr. Speaker, it also means that our approach is working to support businesses to operate safely, and it means that businesses have stepped up to this challenge with hard work and dedication. This pandemic has affected every British Columbian, but we recognize that some people and businesses have been impacted more severely than the others. Especially people of color continue to experience higher rates of unemployment. We are committed to addressing the needs of the hardest hit and ensuring a recovery works for everyone. A couple of days ago, Mr. Speaker, I have heard from a member from the opposition that BC Liberals left us with the surplus budget. I chuckled on that statement because I don't agree with this statement, as majority of British Columbians now know that so-called surplus budget was not a surplus budget. It was the biggest deception. How? Let me clarify and explain it to you. By taking millions of dollars away from crown corporations like ICBC and mismanaging BC Hydro, money laundering by clawing back the disability bus passes, and privatizing many services to avoid taking responsibility is not a surplus budget. I am amazed by the audacity of the members of the opposition talking about transparency, given their very own track record. It is a big deception why members from the opposition forget to mention or highlight the $72 billion debt that was acquired under the BC Liberals government. Let me remind you some of those numbers. Total provincial debt was around $45.2 billion when Ms. Clark took office in 2012, and that was swollen to $65.3 billion. And then, according to the quarterly report at the time, it reached to $72 billion in 2019. Talk about fiscal responsibility. BC Liberals also completely gutted. Yes, they got it. I'm sorry, some members, these words mean harsh, but that was the reality. I just can't help it not to mention, because healthcare is the sector you don't touch, or you shouldn't touch, because people's lives depend on how it is budgeted. So yes, BC Liberals also completely gutted the healthcare system by making, by laying off many female, largely female healthcare workers, and by making the leased buildings, having no staff and cutting existing healthcare staff is not called improving the healthcare services. How would opposition member will justify that so-called surplus budget that they're referring to many of the healthcare colleagues who struggled financially due to the large 10% wage rollbacks under the BC Liberals, and many job losses with privatization of services like long-term care centers and food service and laundry. That was a recent one, especially in interior health as well. And laundry was privatized and sold to one of their biggest donors from Alberta. I was so relieved that big money is taken out of the politics, which helped us to remove a repetition of Wild West of Canadian political cash, where people were totally forgotten and the top 2% were the influencer on BC Liberals government's decision-making. It is a harsh reality. I'm sorry I have to mention, but it's so good to contrast once in a while so voters know. To be clear, I'm not saying previous government, I am saying BC Liberals, as I'm more than happy to remind people of the BC Liberals track record. Members from the opposition are also stuck in the 90s and are so obsessed with 90s, yet they don't like when we mention 2016 to contrast. Let me remind you that the impact of BC Liberals cuts and consequences we have faced as a young parent whose kids are in the education system, and as I mentioned, as healthcare professionals, and delayed diagnosis, and the era where direct impact was placed on kids seeking, like my daughter, had to wait for 6 to 7 years for the service that she needed for her learning disability, because those services were cut. And finally, 2017, some of the resources were added, and that's when she accessed those services. But by then it was too late. She was ready for high school. And again, to previous member, we don't need to read any books if you are going through those lived experiences. If member want to discuss 90s track record, then I don't think it's unfair to reflect on social credits history, where only the party name was changed, but some faces remain the same. There should be no need to change party names to hide the track record in order to mislead voters. This is so disappointing to hear from the members of the opposition calling recovery benefit as vote buying money. By making such statements, you are questioning the integrity of our voters and pretty much saying that British Columbians sell their votes. This is such a shame for any elected officials, including myself, if I make such statements or allegations. There was also a comment made during the media interview after the elections from one of the BC Liberals candidates saying that people were confused between the federal Liberals and the BC Liberal government. And that was the reason of losing some seats. Again, questioning voters' intelligence and IQ level, I can't even imagine. Voters and longtime BC Liberal supporters who talked to me, and were so frustrated and disappointed at such statements. Wow, just wow. I want to remind the members of the opposition that when you baselessly point a finger towards others, 3 fingers get pointed at you. BC NDP presenting 3 consecutive balanced budgets until February 2020 and maintained AAA credit rating. And this was achieved despite heavily investing in public services like healthcare, mental health, childcare spaces, education, housing, eliminating MSP, and the list is long. Mr. Speaker, I know that there is much more to do, and it will take a while to fix and address 16 years of neglect. Yes, 16 years of neglect. I'm not going into 90s, just the recent 16 years before 2017. There is a reason I am proudly standing on this side of the House and continue to be part of the BC NDP, even before, despite knowing the odds of my victory, as there is no way after witnessing and having to live through the hardships and seeing direct impact on many of my patients due to the BC Liberals gutting the services that would be able to support them, that I can stand on that side. It is no secret that when the pandemic struck, BC was an economic leader. We were one of the Canada's fast-growing economies with one of the lowest unemployment rate. Our strengths remain. We still have a skilled workforce, vast natural resources, and our gateway to Asia. And we are still committed to unlocking the huge economic potential of reconciliation and tackling the climate crisis. We were already making great progress on keeping life affordable for people, building roads and homes, and opening new schools and childcare spaces. Mr. Speaker, these things give us a head start on a strong recovery. BC's recovery won't happen overnight, but by focusing on people and working for them, we are making progress. Mr. Speaker, we have had British Columbians back since the beginning. We will take the same approach during the recovery. December's speech from Throne was a plan to keep supporting people through the winter with direct support for healthcare, families, renters, and businesses. And I have seen the direct positive impact of all these efforts in my riding in Vernon-Monashee. BC Recovery Benefit is helping families make ends meet with payment of up to $1,000. Hard-hit small and medium businesses are receiving grants of up to $30,000 or up to $45,000 in tourism business to help keep people working. We are helping thousands of people upskill, reskill, and find in-demand jobs. We are going to keep improving fairness at ICBC and make life more affordable. We are going to increase in real estate to protect people and tackle fraud. Mr. Speaker, next month we will introduce Budget 2021, which will keep making healthcare better, support people and businesses, and build stronger communities. Mr. Speaker, the bottom line is reality is that pandemic brought unexpected challenge faster than anyone could imagine. And we are finding ways to support people, and BC businesses are finding ways to pivot, and government is finding ways to help them. In response to huge demand by BC businesses, we're more than tripling the funding for the Launch Online program to $42 million to help more businesses develop e-commerce. The pandemic has disproportionately affected Black and Indigenous communities and people of color, as I mentioned previously, which is why 30% of the grants will be reserved for BIPOC business and rural businesses. Mr. Speaker, our government remain committed to helping businesses build back stronger so that people in the province have good jobs and more secure future. I appreciate the announcement to provide millions to childcare providers, school boards, and health authorities to help them deliver COVID-safe care and renovate to create more spaces. Mr. Speaker, our government has delivered hundreds of affordable, supportive, and accessible housing units alone in Vernon, and these have changed many people's lives. People from Vernon-Monashee are so appreciative of the recent announcements of more affordable housing for Vernon and area. This is going to benefit many more people by helping them to find a home. I thank our government for paying attention to this long overlooked and ignored issue of affordable housing in Vernon-Monashee. Mr. Speaker, Bill 10 SPLY Act will help our government to continue these great initiatives to further support British Columbians. With this, I would like to end my remarks and urge all the members of this House to think by putting people at your heart. There should be no place for ego or personal agendas in the politics because people of British Columbia have put their trust and hopes in us. When they elected us, they were fully trusting, and so let's serve them well with the selfless service. We are here working for people, and Bill 10 SPLY Act is aimed directly to help people. It is okay to appreciate what's done right, and it's also okay to take accountability for what was not done right. So with that, I'm closing again, once again saying that I fully support this bill, and thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts.